everyone to the first afternoon session of what's happening in Black British History 5. My name is Philip Murphy, I'm Director of the Institute of Commonwealth Studies here, and it's great to see you all supporting this really important event. Thanks so much for coming. This session is going to be on recovering and engaging the public with Black British histories. We've got 4 separate presentations, and we've got from now until 3 o'clock. And because we're going to shift around a bit later on, we've got to keep pretty much to time. So, I mean, ideally it would be great if all the presentations were about 15 minutes, because I think there's going to be a lot of questions that will relate to more than one panel at the end. It'd be really good to have a kind of proper discussion between the speakers as well as with you. So I'm going to be fairly strict about the timing, but I'm sure everyone will keep perfectly to time. So I'm going to take the presentations in the order they come on the programme. So it's a great pleasure to introduce Munira Mohamed and Monique Baptiste-Brown from Black Cultural Archives, who are going to talk about reclaiming heritage, Black Cultural Archives methodology for creating living heritage and evaluating the recent curated exhibition, Rastafari in Motion. Thank you very much.
So hi everyone, so my name is Monique Baptiste-Brown. I am the marketing manager at the Black Cultural Archives, and sort of really interesting for me to kind of be speaking in these spaces, because obviously I'm not a historian, not a sociologist, or any of those things. I work in communications. But ultimately, one of the key things that I kind of felt though was really important to relay in our kind of paper was about the process and the method in which how we tell these stories, how we communicate, and how we retell narratives of history, and this in particular when you're looking at living heritage.
And I'm Munira. I'm the learning manager and public programmer in Black Cultural Archives. Particularly interested in this talk in particular because it demanded a completely different way of working, particularly in the way we use the program and how that was used to sort of understand the heritage, and particularly the sort of cultural and living heritage and how you do that justice. And so hopefully within our 15 minutes we'll be able to touch on some of those very, very key points. But yeah, so
for those that don't maybe not heard of us, just a little bit of information about like who we are, a bit of background. So it was founded in 1981. We were established, the key purpose was to collect, preserve and celebrate the histories of African people of African descent in Britain. I think one of the really important things for the work that we do is about uncovering often hidden or untold histories. Our co-founder, Len Garrison, he saw the necessity to actually document this history before it was lost, before the generations started to fade away. So obviously we're thinking about, in the period of the 1980s actually, the generations now kind of passing away ultimately, and we still continue to do that work. And one of the things that we're going to kind of really we hope you get from the talk is actually when we're still in that space where there's living heritage, and actually the work that we should be doing and can be doing to start documenting and preserving the heritage ultimately. To give a bit of background, our recent exhibition, Rastafari in Motion, was co-curated with the Rastafari Legal Liberty. The idea was an idea that was conceived in partnership with the group long before we kind of opened our space in 2014, and it was an idea that was very much moulded together. So that idea of partnership and how to develop idea was right from the conception. The group went on for probably about 2 to 3 years and actually doing some of the work, doing this research and collating the narratives, histories, artifacts from across the different Rastafari mentions and they took their work to Ethiopia and to Jamaica before it arrived back in Britain at Black Culture Archives. So there's an entire kind of process of engagement and consultation that was really, really important to the foundation of the exhibition.
Well, it is interesting.
I'm so sorry.
Well, it's good, it's interesting. So the ambition of the exhibition was to fundamentally to preserve, but ultimately to retell the narrative of the Rastafari movement in Britain, to really address some of the misrepresentation of the community and their beliefs. So part of the kind of narrative of the exhibition was really about kind of conveying the guiding principles of their holistic way of life, and also looking at taking a closer look at the contributions they make to British society. It being one of the kind of narratives that I suppose are always considered to be sort of marginalised, and actually through the exhibition you start to see some of the really important contributions that it's made within Black British history, but also within British history on a whole. The exhibition particularly looked at, I suppose in two halves, the appearance of Emperor Haile Selassie before the nations, and then also the rising consciousness of Black youth in the kind of 1960s onwards, which was fundamental to looking at some of the really kind of important ideologies of what it means to be Black and British today. So, I suppose not necessarily for this room, but generally, when we tend to think of the beacons of Black history, we revert to the likes of Mary Seacole, Samuel Coltrane, the kind of the big names that people know about. And one of the things that we looked at within Rastafari in Motion is the fact that whilst those contributions are massively significant, we often miss what the history makers of today, people that are living, that are part of history, part of historical narratives, that they may be our grandmothers, they may be our aunts, they may be friends that are just within our everyday lives. But when you look back through their personal archives, there are moments like this that are actually so integral to what we understand to our place in society today. Okay, so ultimately, Rastafari Motion gave us an opportunity to present a different heritage proposition. It allowed us to do something that moved away from documenting what we often consider as tangible. So that we've got the archive document, we've got the records, we've got this material and it's tangible, we know it's there, which we often consider, I suppose, the most accessible, which institutions more easily kind of connect with. But what the Rastafari Motion did, and the work we did with the group, was actually trying to find a way and a process to actually present an archive, a living history, something that may not have even been documented as yet, may not have even reached the point of being considered as archival. In that approach, I suppose, one of the things that we had to learn as an institution was about two fundamental things. It was about respect and willingness to learn. Because we were no longer at a point where we were reflecting. We were not looking back in history. There were actual individuals, people that were actually able to question and challenge and to reconsider what we were actually, the history that we're actually talking about. And I think this is one of the key things that you'll see throughout the kind of the talk that we're talking about. That what do we do when we're we're in a situation where the history makers themselves, the community themselves, are stepping forward and saying, this is our history and we would like this to be told, and how do we go about doing that? So one of the things that we have, one of the key learning points, I suppose, was the relationship and the exchange between the community practitioner and the institution, and that being an organic space for learning between each other. So, this is now from a marketing perspective. Obviously, a lot of what I do is much as kind of communicating in terms of tweets and words and language, press releases, etc. But it's also about imagery. And with imagery, you're connecting with symbolism. And for the Rastafari community, obviously symbolism is massively important. When you look at the history, and you look at kind of their journey, how that a lot of their symbols have been misappropriated, have been used in commercial gain. And one of the key things that we noticed is that we started the journey thinking, right, we've got to create a visual image that has effectiveness, that can really connect with a wide audience. That's the idea of visual communications, that's the point of marketing. We designed and designed and designed, and we came up with loads of different versions of what we thought could be the best possible image, I suppose, the lead image. And what we found is that we went right back to the source. We ended up back working with the Rastafari community to represent and to give the lead space to the Rastafari flag. And I think this is a really important thing, because it actually meant that in that learning process, the most meaningful, most effective message didn't come from an outside source. It wasn't coming from us recreating or reinterpreting. It was actually coming from a space of learning. And I kind of finish off, I suppose the thing that we kind of need to understand from that is that when we consider the colours of red, gold and green, they do not need kind of messing with, so to speak. They speak for themselves because the history is able to speak for itself. So I'll hand over to Oliver. I won't hand over to Munira, sorry. Okay, right, I'll make this really quick. So valuing heritage. One of the things that, in part of the process of the journey, we looked at the commitment to kind of uncovering and delving into archives to present materials. And what do we do when these materials are not, as I say, in an archive? They're not really archived. They are things that exist within people's homes or within personal memory. And how do we then continue to add that to our timeline? Because we do the job when we're trying to present something that is almost quite linear in a way, but how do we remain in a fluid space that we can continue that evolving process? So one of the things that sort of came across was this engagement, this connection that happened when you had one of our patrons, Benjamin Zephaniah, presenting something from his own personal archive, and that connecting with others in the group, and in that turn, that inserting itself within the wider timeline of Black history.
So I'm going to talk a little bit more about actually how you capture something that is intangible. As practitioners, how do you capture something that is intangible? And programming played a really, really important part of that. One of the lessons I was taught from ORL and the wider Rasta community was the importance of liberty, and this was something that was non-compromising. You have to capture it in its holistic form. It has to have integrity. It's a life force of its own, i.e., it evolves, it grows, and it's moving. And so what I had to do as a programmer was try to take some of those principles into the way in which I program. And I think, again, this thing of having an intangible cultural heritage is really, really important when we think about the way we curated or try to sort of program for the Rastafari Emotion exhibition, because actually a lot of it is personal testimonies. So the image on the left-hand side is one of the members, Jar Blue and Asante Fox, who was one of the sort of early originators, or seen as the co-founders of the Rastafari movement in Brixton. And again, the image on the right-hand side in the early 1970s, when some of these sort of groups began to become more sort of radicalized, but also sort of claiming and reclaiming that heritage. And again, these things exist in collective memories and personal testimonies, and so the program has to adapt to that. And so the experts now become community members, and it now becomes the people, the elders as well, that were alive during those early days. And I think that was something really important, again, for me to remember. Traditions and ceremonies, again, something when we think of heritage, we sort of may come to mind, but as sort of heritage institutions, I think it's something that's really important to reflect on. So again, quite a lot of the events we had would start with an Ivy ceremony, again, so actually practicing the heritage, so it's not just sort of there on the wall, it's part and parcel of the way in which the events are delivered, and the way in which we open and close a lot of the talks as well. Again, so I went to UCL as well, and I became really interested in heritage, ironically looking at development. So thinking about the future, I thought, hold on a minute, what about the past and where did we start? And this is where I sort of began to become really interested in this idea of intangible cultural heritage, because it's traditional, but it's living at the same time. And I think that's something really important for us to sort of learn and remember, but also in that same space, it's community-based. It has to be claimed by the communities who relate to it, and therefore, again, expressed and sort of represented from that perspective. And I think, again, in the way in which sort of the program was set out, that was very much part and parcel. And I'm just going to give an example of this. So originally, when we started, I was given, I think, a list of like 24 suggested workshops that I should do. But actually, it's not until you actually engage with the different members and sort of listen and find out about the different historical moments in time that you actually find out what events, what places are valued. And this is an example of a talk that we ended up doing. It was on St. Agnes Place and the Rastafari headquarters that were in Kennington, and sort of later, or most recently lost to, I think it was property developments. And had I not done that digging, had I not listened, had I not actually thrown away that list and actually just started talking to people to find out what was relevant and what happened in the local area, I wouldn't have known about the significance of St. Agnes Place and the importance it played in terms of sort of having a general hub and a sort of Rastafari headquarters, as it were, and wouldn't have come across all of these personal documents as well that one of the sort of leaders of Ethiopian World Federation, which were based there, brought forward. So again, early stage sort of education pack from the 70s, the different Nabingi drumming ceremonies that happened there on a weekly basis, and also some very, very early publishings trying to explain what the Rastafari movement were about. And again, this is something I came across sort of through this organic process, and this idea of sort of evolving the program with time. Another example of this, as Monique mentioned earlier, was sort of the importance of the stories, of listening to the stories. So, as you may know, Benjamin Zephaniah is one of our patrons, and I sort of called him up to ask him for, pigeonholed him a bit, asked him if he had like a poem or something that he could donate. And he let me know that actually he had something he might be more interested in, and that was our first edition Marcus Garvey book of 1914, with a note of one of the original founders or original representatives of UNIA, and also a gold medallion, which you can see on the first picture on the left and the last one on the right, from Haile Selassie himself, that was handed to one of the pilots that flew him around. And eventually, again, through this, the importance of sort of listening and digging, through and with the community, we were able to add that to our exhibition early July. So this is an image of, as you can see, the RRL group, ourselves, and Benjamin Zephaniah, and on the left-hand side, you can see the presentation of that and the inclusion of that as well. And so, I have 2 minutes, yes. And so again, this idea of liberty very much being a part and parcel of the way in which we created it, and actually, as an institution, having the flexibility to say, actually, this exhibition isn't complete, and there is emerging documents, emerging sort of items that are deemed valuable. And so what do we do when confronted with that? Well, actually, we include it. We include it, and we include it at a point in time that might not have been conceived in the beginning. So this is mid-program or mid-season, as it were. But eventually, that was something that actually the community and the wider public actually really appreciated. And so one of the last things I'm going to talk about is accountability. One of the differences between doing Black Georgians, which we did before, and particularly programming for Black Georgians, is actually, as you put something up, you have a group of people, a number of people that actually can turn around and say, hey, actually, I disagree with that, that's wrong. And whilst we might have that with a few historians and experts, it's very different when you're representing something that's a group of people that are alive and can contest some of the facts that you're trying to establish. And actually, as much as it meant that there were some things we had to change, I think it was really important for us to learn actually, again, as much as we're curators, the facts are in motion as much as the exhibition is in motion. Heritage is a social construct, and a lot of it are values. The values are disputed, and so again, one has to sort of listen to, when in moments where we're being checked, essentially. And I think, going forward, that's something we're really going to take on board. What that meant was we had to recreate the timeline that we had. And so although RRL was sort of representing the wider community, halfway through I think they had realised they spoke to representatives of the wider community, and other people had come forward and highlighted that there were key missing dates. And so this is an image of a day where we had a curators talk, and it's the same day that we put up a new timeline that included dates that had been sort of validated by a further process of sort of community curation, and this is in August, so again it sort of just speaks to the importance, I guess, of consultation. And finally, I think what I wanted to end with was the sort of big question mark around this thing of timelines, because we have this broader category, or this category that is black, and we don't necessarily always unpick it. What do we do when we come across different groups that are within that, but not necessarily automatically thought of when we think of Black history? We don't think of the Rastafari timeline. We don't think of the importance of Marcus Garvey and how that influenced the whole movement of Rastafari groups. We don't necessarily think about Haile Selassie and his and when he confronted the League of Nations. We don't think of Bath. And we don't necessarily think of the uprisings in the 1980s, and think of the Rastafari community that were also included in the Scarman report as well. And so that, I think, is one of the sort of main question marks I want to leave everyone with. When we do black timelines and when we curate sort of history, where do we regard sort of living history, and how do we do that justice?
Thank you very much.